guys, Andrea Mills here. Today I am going to talk to you guys about how our pregnancy is coming along. I plan to do an update video once a month for the rest of the pregnancy, and then at least, well, for 1 month we're going to do some special features and do just on pregnancy and like do some fun pregnancy related projects together, sewing and I don't know, lots of baby things one of these months. But besides that, we'll do this little update thing once a month and keep you guys posted on how things are going. This week I am 15 weeks pregnant, so we're into our 4th month now. If we're just meeting for the first time, I will tell you that this is going to be our 9th baby. We have 5 sons and 3 daughters, and they range in age from 2 to 15. We don't know yet, of course, what we're having this time. Now, we had 4 boys in a row. Then we had our first girl, was our 5th baby, and my pattern of morning sickness was different with her than it was my boys. So after that, I accurately predicted what we were having with each one of our kids because the pattern held with all of them. So with all my boys, I felt kind of sick a little in the first 2 months, and I've never been a person who got very sick when I was pregnant, but I would have a little bit of nausea here and there, and so it happened in the first 2 months with my boys, and then I was fine the rest of the pregnancy. With my girls, it was the opposite. I was fine the first 2 months, and then I would feel kind of yucky the rest of the way through, just off and on a little bit. So this time I felt really great in the beginning, so I thought, okay, that seems like we're following the girl pattern. But here I am in my 4th month and I still feel fine. I haven't felt sick at all. So I don't know if it's because of the natural progesterone I've been taking, if that's made me feel better, but I now cannot predict what we're going to have. So I'm still wanting to lean towards girl because I also had more breast tenderness with my girls, and that's still been sort of an issue a little bit, but I don't know. I don't think that's a strong enough thing for me to actually say, yeah, I think we're having a girl this time. So there you go. One of the most common things you guys want to know is, do we have a name picked out? And I'm going to have to say, no, we don't. We haven't even talked about names yet. When we had our last baby, when Claudia was born, if we were going to have a boy, we were going to name him Cyrus, and Claudia for a girl. So all of the kids just assume that if we have a boy, we're going to use Cyrus this time, and I suppose I'm still fine with that. But we haven't actually put any serious talk at all into picking baby names. So that'll probably be a ways down the road before we get to that part. This morning I checked my urine and did all of those little tests. I weighed myself and did a little checkup, and everything is just perfect. My blood pressure is great. Everything in my on my urine test was perfect. What else did I do? Oh, I haven't listened to the baby's heartbeat today, so I don't know what the heart rate is, but we have heard it. The first time we heard it was at 8 weeks. I found it that day. Tom was actually not with me when I heard it the first time. So let's see, it was on a Friday night, and he had taken our oldest son Thomas and his friends out, and they were going to go play Magic the Gathering with the guys they always do on Friday night, but not enough guys showed up that night, so they all ended up coming back to our house and playing Magic until like 2 in the morning, and I, about 1 o'clock, decided to go to bed, and I thought, I wonder if I can pick up the baby's heartbeat yet. So I decided to try it out, and sure enough, I found it right away. But Tom wasn't with me, and we hadn't told the kids yet that we were pregnant, and so I didn't want to like call for him to come hear it. Although he says later he could hear the sound of the Doppler because, you know, we have a small house and our bed is like, I don't know, 8 feet or so from the table they were playing in. There was just a door closed between us. So he did know that I was listening, but he didn't actually hear the baby's heartbeat. And then I could not find it for, I don't know, how far. I have it in my little chart here. I can see how many weeks along I was before I heard it again. And this is the same thing that happened with Claudia. I found it at 9 weeks with her, and then it was like a long time before I ever found it again. So let's see. I was, 13 weeks before I found it again this time. So 5 weeks passed, and I didn't try like every day or anything, but maybe once a week or so I would try. And I just didn't find it again. But we did record it the other day. Tom was with me when we heard it the second time, and I've heard it since then too, but the second time we found it, he recorded it. So at the end of the video, I'm going to play a little clip of that so you guys can hear the heartbeat. I have not gained any weight. I've actually lost about 5 pounds. That's what has happened to me the last 2 pregnancies. Now this is the 3rd time. With Sophia, she was our biggest baby. She was 9 pounds, 13 ounces. But I lost weight, like, I think I ended the pregnancy being 2 pounds less than when I started. And then like after the birth, I was like 30 pounds less than when I started. But then within 2 months, it all came back and I didn't do anything. In fact, I eat way more when I'm pregnant because I'm more careful when I'm pregnant than I am when I'm not. And that's just what happened. And then with Claudia, I lost for a good portion of the pregnancy. Then I started gaining it back a little bit. So I think I had a net gain of like 12 pounds with her. And she was 8, what was she? 8'11", I think. Anyway, so I assume that I'll probably lose for a little while and then probably start gaining. But again, eating is a difficulty for me because I'm just busy and I have a hard time stopping to eat, and I know that's a bad thing. So I've been trying to be a little more consistent now that we're into school of actually making real lunches for all of us. And of course we always have dinner, but especially in the summer, I just let the kids make their own lunch every day and their own breakfast. And it might be 3 or 4 in the afternoon before I ever stop to eat anything. And of course, when I'm pregnant, that's not a good idea. So I'm trying to get better about eating consistently. And I need to step it up on that situation because I know I'm still falling down on the job there. Which that leads me into a couple of books that I'm going to share with you that I'm planning to, I don't know if I'll read the whole thing, but kind of review through this month. One being the Brewer Medical Diet for Normal and High Risk Pregnancy. I really like Dr. Brewer's ideas about preventing preeclampsia and things like that. And he actually has, well, actually, I think he's dead. I'm not sure. But there's a website called the drbrewerdiet.com. And it's got a lot of really good information on there. And so I'm going to be reading back through this, and these are really old books, you can tell. I bought them used and I've read them many times. But this is Let's Have Healthy Children by Adele Davis. Nutrition is a topic that I am very interested in. I'm very passionate about. I love to learn about it. And, over the last it's been about 11 years that I've been really studying nutrition. And over that time, I've shed a lot of fears that I used to have about food and what's healthy, what's not healthy. And I now practice what I call an inclusive diet, where everything is acceptable, everything is has a positive place in our diet. So I don't label things as junk or healthy. We just eat what we want to eat. But that doesn't mean, I'm not sure why people's brains go to this place, like if you're okay with having soda and things like that, that's all that you have. And that's kind of a really silly way of thinking, I guess. So when I learn things about nutrition, I am not looking for things to cut out of my diet. I let go of that a long time ago. What I am interested in is what positive things I can add into my diet, things that will be beneficial to us. And I'll try to learn how to cook better, better in the sense of, my mom was not an awesome cook. She didn't teach me to cook very well, and I just don't know how to do a lot of things. Like if you gave me a turnip, I probably wouldn't know what to do with it. I'd have to look it up and figure it out. So I'm trying to expand my repertoire of things that I can cook and what I know how to do with it. So, improving my cooking skills, adding more things into our diet, and just responding to what I believe is the one surefire, most safe way of determining what to eat and what not to eat is that God made our bodies to communicate with us, and it does that through appetite and through cravings. And last month, I think it was, I could not get enough eggs. I ate probably 2 dozen eggs over the course of a few days. And I don't know why that I wanted them so badly, but I'm like, I'm just going to go with it. And I ate a ton of eggs. One of the stories that really impacted me was in this book. She talked about a study with some orphans, like, I don't know, maybe in the 30s or something like that. And they wanted to see what the kids would eat if no one was directing them. So they didn't mix any foods. So the kids didn't like have bread, but they could have, you know, wheat that was cooked, and they'd have a pile of salt, and you know, they'd have fruit that was whole fruit, nothing cooked. I mean, I think certain things were cooked, but they weren't cooked in a recipe. Like, nothing was mixed together. And they would sit a nurse there with the baby. So if the baby needed help with a cup or something like that, the nurse would help the baby. Otherwise, she didn't influence at all what this child ate. And everything was weighed and measured and all that before the baby ate. And then after the baby ate, and things that were dropped on the floor or put back on the tray and everything, so they could accurately determine what this baby ate. And this was with a lot of little babies. It wasn't just one or two. And they said that it was interesting to watch what happened. That one little guy, I think he would take a hard-boiled egg, and I believe he would eat the yolk, but he would leave the white. And they later found out he was actually allergic to the whites of eggs, and he naturally didn't want to eat those. And one little guy, they said, would just eat handfuls of salt every once in a while, and he would be grimacing because it was, you know, very strong on his little tongue, but he just would eat it. And one little kid ate so many bananas, but then the next day he would really want something else. So they said it seemed kind of bizarre what the babies would choose from day to day, but overall they actually ate a really well-balanced diet. And I guess it just spoke to me that our bodies tell us what we need. And that's the whole idea that, like, if you don't restrict kids with candy or whatever, that they will just, that's all they'll eat. And I can tell you from personal experience and from watching my kids that we all have a limit of what we enjoy, and we stop enjoying it. We don't want to eat it anymore. We want something different. And I feel like we create eating disordered thinking when we do put categories on this is bad for us and you can't have it. That, like, creates an unhealthy desire in it, you know, for that thing. And I didn't mean for this to be like my video on nutrition, so I'm not going to keep going into that. I know this is a topic that I'm always nervous to talk about because some people are so passionate about it that they get upset, I guess, when I share my ideas. And so I'm not meaning to upset anyone, and I certainly don't want to say you need to be like me, or if you do something different there's something wrong with you. I'm just telling you where I'm at and why I do what I do. So I was already kind of looking at Dr. Brewer's website today and being like, oh yeah, I need to do this and this, I need to add these things in, and I need to be more consistent with my eating and things. So I'm looking for nutrition help or reminders in that sense. What do I need to be adding in to make sure that I'm growing a healthy baby? So I definitely recommend Dr. Brewer's website or books if you are growing a baby too, because they are really helpful. The one big thing I thought I would talk about in this video is some people have expressed concerns for us because of my age. I'm 39, and what being older, what, like, the risks of having a baby when you're older. I just want to talk about what those risks are and how risky it actually is, to maybe alleviate some fears that some people, not that you're fearing for us, but the concerns that some people have. And then for your own self, I know there have been some of you that have said that you would like to have another baby, but because of your age you feel some concern about that. So I just thought that we'd have a little chat about that. So I went onto the internet and I thought, what are the actual risks that we're talking about? So I made a little list of what I found. The risks were increased rates of premature birth, increased likelihood of birth defects, increased likelihood of having multiples, more difficulty conceiving. Well, this one wasn't necessarily increased risk. It just said that you're more likely to start out being diabetic or having hypertension, increased risk of preeclampsia, increased risk of low birth weight, and increased risk of maternal death. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is, let's see, 5 of these are actually all related to each other. That's the diabetes, hypertension, and premature birth, preeclampsia, and low birth weight. So the reason that some of these things are more likely is because, you know, if you start out with having high blood pressure, you're more likely then to have a premature birth. And if you have a premature birth, you're more likely to have a low birth weight baby. And by the way, I'm not a doctor. I'm just talking from a person who just thinks about things and tries to learn about things. So, you know, whatever you make of all of this, what you will. But, so I guess I would say, if you're not starting out with diabetes or hypertension, there's not necessarily a greater risk of these things. Difficulty conceiving, I've already shared with you that we did have more difficulty this time, not conceiving, but of maintaining the pregnancy because of my low progesterone. But taking the natural progesterone in the form of a cream has taken care of that problem. The increased risk of multiples, to me, would be awesome. So I don't have any reason to think that we're having multiples, but if we did, I would be super happy about that. So the last two that I'm going to talk about are, I want to do some math with you, and I've already shared some of this with you guys in the comments of a different video, but the two big things here are the triple risk of maternal death when you're older. So you're 3 times more likely to die during birth or within the 6 weeks after a birth if you're older, and your risks of your baby having birth defects are greater. And it's interesting to me how these things are always told to women or men, whoever, people, that it's always presented in the scariest way possible. And I'm not sure why, but that's just how it is. They don't tell you things to calm you. They tell you more to scare you. And so we're going to look at the maternal death thing here. I've got a little note card that I wrote this stuff down on. That's why I keep looking here. But the risk of maternal death. So I read the statistic that you're 3 times more likely to die if you're older. So I thought, well, what is the actual risk of dying? I don't know what it is. So I looked it up, and it was in the statistic I found was the most recent one was from 2005, I think. And there might be more recent than that, but that's just the one I found. How did they phrase it? I can't remember. However many, 15 per 100,000, I think. So if you do the math, convert that fraction, 15 out of 100,000, into a percent, you get 0.02% chance. So that is your risk if you're younger of dying when you're having a baby or dying in the 6 weeks after you have a baby. So that means if we presented this as a percentage and in the opposite light, what is your risk of living or your chances of living? If you're younger, it's a 99.98% chance that you're going to be fine. 99.98%. Now, your risk is triple if you're 35 or older. That means that your risk is 45 in 100,000 or 0.06%. So that's your risk of dying, 0.06%. Your chance of living and being fine is 99.94%. So even though hearing you're 3 times more likely to die, it still doesn't seem very scary to think that you have a 99.94% chance of being just fine. So that's the maternal death one. The other one is the chances of having birth defects. And I looked to see what are the birth defects that are likely, and of course the chance of having a baby with Down syndrome is by far the most common birth defect. So that's the numbers I'm going to talk about. Any other numbers would, I suppose, be less than this. I think it was the March of Dimes website, but I'm not positive, that shares these scary sounding statistics, okay? So at 25, your risk of having a baby with Down syndrome is only 1 in 1,200. By the time you're 35, your risk has jumped to 1 in 350. By the time you're 40, which I'm a year away from, you have a very scary risk. Now it's skyrocketed to 1 in 100, down from 1 in 1,200 at 25. And at 50, you have a 1 in 10 chance of having a baby with Down syndrome. So, you know, hearing at 25, it's 1 in 1,200, and at 50, it's 1 in 10. That sounds really, honestly terrifying. Not that I'm saying that having a baby with Down syndrome is terrible, but I mean, it's not terrible. It's just that that's the thing that people say to scare you. Whether they mean to scare you or not, that's what's put out there. So let's do some math, and we're going to convert these fractions into percentages and see how scary this actually is, okay? So at 25, your risk is 1 in 1,200, which converts to a percentage of 0.08%. So that's your chances of having a baby with Down syndrome. That means that your chance of having a baby that doesn't have Down syndrome is 99.92%. So pretty darn close to 100%. At 35, it seems scary to think 1 in 350, but that converts to being 0.29%, or a 99.71% chance that you will have a normal baby. So 99, still 99%, not 99.9% now, but it's still 99.7%. So that doesn't seem very scary now, does it? Then when you get to the old age of 40, your risk of having a baby with Down syndrome has skyrocketed to 1 in 100. But we all know that means a 1% chance or a 99% chance that you will have a normal baby. So you've dropped from 99.9% at age 25 down to 99% at age 40. And I think for most of us, that would seem like pretty much the same chance. I mean, there is a difference, but not very much difference. Then, of course, most of us aren't still fertile by the time we're 50, or many of us. I don't know actually how many people are, but I don't hear of many 50-year-olds having babies. But if you did, by the way, I want to go back to this 40-year-old. My grandma was 40 when she had her last child, and he's 2 or 3 years older than me, so he's in his early 40s. He's born in the 70s, and as soon as, this is like in rural Wyoming too, where I don't know, it just boggles my mind that this happened here. But her doctor right away told her, because of her age, her baby was going to be born with Down syndrome and she needed to have an abortion. And she was appalled and was like, whatever, pal, that's not happening. But I think, and of course he wasn't. And even if he was, that just is an awful, awful thing to do. But it just boggles my mind that she had a 99% chance of having a normal baby, yet that 1% made him say you should abort your baby. It's ridiculous. But okay, so now up to the 50-year-olds. So 50-year-olds have a 1 in 10 chance of having a baby with Down syndrome. That is 10%. That means you still have a 90% chance that you're going to have a healthy, normal baby. So is that a little riskier than a 25-year-old? Yeah, it is riskier. But still, 90% sounds pretty awesome. So like, let's say you were diagnosed with cancer and they said, you know what, people with your kind of cancer have a 90% chance of surviving. You'd be like, those are pretty good odds. I think I'm going to just be okay with this whole situation. And like, I don't know, I can't even think of any examples, but how many things would we think that 90% was a really awesome, good chances? And there's a 90% chance that your baby is not going to have Down syndrome, even when you're 50 years old. So I hope that any of you who are older and desire to have more children would take all of this with a grain of salt, that while your chances of these things are increased as you get older, the difference is so minuscule. Is it really something to lose sleep over? Is it really something that you should submit to all sorts of extra tests and trauma? I mean, all the testing that they do is probably riskier than your chances of having something wrong are in the first place. So I don't know if that made sense what I just said, but anyways, I hope this gives you some peace of mind, both about my pregnancy and about possibly yours. So I want to thank you guys for coming over and chatting with me about this pregnancy that we're so excited about. And I'm going to let you listen to the heartbeat here before we go, and I will be talking to you guys again very soon.